Hello, hello. Welcome to episode 8 of Beyond the Frets. I'm extremely excited about this episode. I know I probably say that about each one of these, but it's true. My guest today is guitarist, educator, and Instagram agitator, Noel Johnston. He is a fantastic musician from Texas. He lives in the Dallas-Denton area. Actually don't really know exactly where he lives, but he's in Dallas or Denton because he teaches at the University of North Texas in Denton, and he has his own studio, music studio, that he runs with his wife called Lone Star Music Academy. I've known of Noel and his amazing playing for a number of years through Instagram and, social media. And I've been able to catch him playing at the the Jazz Education Network conference, which is typically in Dallas about once every 4 years. He really does it all. And that's the first topic that I brought up in this interview, was just poking his brain about how he goes from playing, really intense modern jazz to country and pop. And he plays in contemporary church settings as well, and everything in between, metal, rock, funk. It's insane. But the through line through all of those different styles that he plays is this wonderful inventiveness and just a sense of freedom with harmony and rhythm and modality that's really fun. And he's got his own kind of brand of wackiness, and I mean that in a truly endearing way. And he also has written a book called The Voicing Modes Book, a chord voicing approach to hearing and practicing modes for comping, improvisation, reharmonization, and composition. It's a very, very cool book. I highly encourage you to get it. It's on his website, and I think you can buy it on Amazon. I've got mine. It's great. Really great. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode. We get into a lot of stuff like his history, and he actually plays a bunch in this, which is great. I haven't featured a ton of playing in the episode so far, and that's not by design or anything. It's just this is the first time it came up, or he wanted to show some of these concepts that we were getting into. So it might be a little nerdy at times, but I think if you're here, then you already know the vibe of Beyond the Frets, so I think we're all good. Before we get into it, I want to thank the Mid-American Center for Contemporary Music for sponsoring this podcast, as well as Silver Heart Productions. And I want to thank you, dear listener, for listening, spreading the word about this podcast, and liking, subscribing, rating, reviewing, sharing, anything you can do to get the podcast out to new listeners, because it really does mean a lot to me. And I hope these conversations inspire you with your own musical journey, whether it may be as a fan or a professional or an amateur, whatever level you're on. And remember, you can find us on Instagram at Beyond the Frets, or just type in my name, Z-A-K-K Jones, Zach Jones. You can also go to beyondthefrets.com or drop me a line at beyondthefretspodcast@gmail.com. Okay, that is the skinny. Let's do it. I'd like you to sit back, grab an axe, and get abducted. This is Beyond the Frets. One of my questions, something that I just admire about you a lot, is that no style or just nothing is off limits, and you're able to just do some country stuff, do some metal stuff, do some jazz stuff, but it's all like you. So I'm kind of wondering where all those influence came at you when you were growing up, and how you've been able to do so many disparate things as a professional.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, so from a long time ago, I wanted to be sort of a jack of all trades kind of guy. That was my initial career choice when I was first starting to play guitar seriously. I wanted to be a studio player. Some of my heroes were one of my heroes was Dan Huff, still is Dan Huff, the great studio player. Was in LA and now he's in Nashville. He's a great producer now. I always thought that his he always like did the perfect 8 bar
Mm.
solos, and I want to be involved in recording, tour with, whoever, whatever. Yeah. And so when I was done with high school and looking for places to study music, um, I didn't really want to go for a pure jazz program or a pure classical program.
Yeah.
And I picked USC, which had a studio / jazz guitar program. I was like, hey, that's kind of cool. And when I was there, so I kind of had a sheltered upbringing. My dad is a musician. He's a violinist and a conductor. And and he was a music minister as well at a church. And so my musical upbringing was either pure classical or pure gospel. I wasn't really allowed to listen to devil music until I was buying my own records. But
Right.
and so I kind of I had a lot of musical background, but like when I got to school, like people that everyone knew about, I didn't know about. And so like everything was a constant discovery for me. So I sort of had to play catch up. And honestly, when I first started at that program, I didn't love jazz.
Mm-hmm.
I understood that jazz was an important thing to study so that I could get good at everything else.
Right.
And I noticed you were talking to some other educators about how it's pretty rare that people have a pure jazz upbringing. They're usually rock or funk thing. Yeah, that was for me. That was me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I sort of got into jazz via fusion, and then got the ear for the exotic sounds and stuff like that. And I think one of the I guess even when I was a kid, my parents did listen to stuff that had really cool jazz harmony, like Take Six.
Sure, yeah.
I just loved,
Super killer.
It kind of sounded like some of that stuff is like bassy arrangements for voice,
Mm-hmm.
cool jazz changes. And so I think maybe from early on, my brain wanted to sort of push the envelope as far as like hearing more exotic harmony and stuff like that. And then, so then I fell in love with jazz as I studied it. And then I graduated and really fell in love with jazz. And I felt like I wanted to go back to school to get more into, more pure jazz and get, kind of fill in some of the gaps in my knowledge. And that's when I went to the University of North Texas. And that's where I've been ever since then.
Wow. Well, I mean, even it sounded like you had a clear idea that you just wanted to be a professional musician. I mean, when did that idea get into your head?
That is a good question. I think I just, you know what? I need to think about that question.
I mean, you said your dad was a professional musician, so maybe you just saw that it was a possibility from the get-go.
So when I was a kid, like, I wanted to be a doctor for a second. And then when I was in 5th grade, got the impression from my mean teacher that I was stupid. So I'm like, okay, forget that. I can't be that. So I actually went to middle school and high school in Australia.
Oh, wow.
It's a very interesting educational system there. It's different than the United States, where you can kind of pick your path late. Whereas in Australia, you sort of kind of get pigeonholed. I don't know, it might be different now, but you kind of get pigeonholed into a certain career path from a very early age, depending on your aptitude for certain things. And you're assigned a number. Back then it was called the HSC. It's the high school certificate, right? So if you get a certain number, then you're allowed to go study medicine, or you're allowed to go study law or whatever.
Wow.
I got, an average score. I'm not stupid, but I just didn't care. I didn't care about high school, you know.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't wasn't until later that I realized, like, hey, I can actually do well at academics, and I ended up being a philosophy minor in college.
Oh, wow.
So like I kind of was a late bloomer academically, I think. But anyway, I think my experience growing up there, that career path was just like automatically like, no, I'm just not allowed to be that.
Wow.
I'm not allowed to be what I can do, you know. And then I went to study music, and it was then that I sort of realized. So I went to a music school in Australia for a year and a half, and then I transferred to USC. And when I went to USC, I was like, okay, now this is going to be really competitive, and I'm gonna like, I didn't know, you sort of want to gauge how you're doing on the sort of pecking order of, you know, your sense of competition comes from your peers.
Yep.
And I kind of quickly realized that that I had a knack for it. I had an ear for it. That I was like, I guess I'm good at this.
Who did you study with during undergrad?
And I had a lot of great teachers. I had so the USC studio guitar program is very they've got a really long big list of really great teachers. And I studied with lots of different ones, like sometimes, different one every semester.
Oh, wow.
The most famous one they had at the time, he's probably still there, Joe Diorio. Have you heard of him?
Oh, yeah, of course. Totally.
Now, to be perfectly honest, I know this is public and everything, but he was not a great teacher.
Okay.
For me at the time.
Right.
Because I was not, like, I was new to jazz, you know, and he's like way super advanced, you know, like, yeah. And I felt like a bee trying to pollinate a flower. Like,
mm-hmm.
How do I do? Like, I don't know how to figure this out, you know. And you know, he was like the you know, sort of aloof, absent-minded professor who, you know, he's like, you know, just buy my book, you know. You know, intervallic designs, which is great, you know.
Yeah.
I think he planted some seeds in my ignorance.
Yeah.
Said some things and planted some seeds that only later, like maybe 10 years later, I'm like, that's what he was saying.
Yep.
And I felt like he was, in a way, he was perfect for me for that time. And then I did have some other teachers that were very much like engaged in exactly where I was and what I needed to do to get to the next step, you know. And so I had those kind of mentors as well, which were also great. But I kind of think it's neat to have like these two different styles of influences. You know?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's critical. I had a very similar experience. My teacher in undergrad he went to Berkeley in the 70s, you know, was a student of Mick Goodrick's, like back when he was first starting. He's very much like that esoteric, like he would tell me something that like 10 years later I was like, whoa, that's what he meant when he was talking about like the burger on Fifth Avenue. I get it. Now I can play my major 7-sharp 5 stuff. Yes. But at the time, my freshman year, you know, I did not know what I was doing with jazz. I was a metal kid. You know, I was a good player and I had really good ears, but I did not know anything about jazz really. So he really kicked my butt. And again, like he kicked my butt in a similar way because he like gave me all these like higher concepts that I was like, what is happening? But I fell in love with it because he was so engaging and so just like, here's the possibilities. Now I had to figure out how to play my arpeggios.
Yeah, there's the fundamentals that sort of like we're expected to know. And then certain teachers don't like to teach that. They just kind of already know that so they can talk about other things. And some people I think it's a very selfless way to teach when you are fully engaged in making sure someone does their fundamentals.
Yep.
because it's not engaging the teacher's personality into the person's playing. If that makes any sense.
It does, but it can because I mean we both know that doing those fundamentals, like there can be many interesting ways and to just to practice them instead of just do this for 18 hours a day and you'll be good, kid. And obviously, clearly from your books and your educational materials, I feel like you're the type that would give interesting perspective when you tell someone to practice their arpeggios. They're like, here's how to do it, but also here's the ways that you're going to apply it and hear it, etc.
Yeah, I try to, teach fundamentals, but maybe like a slightly different way. Like, hey, here's a way that you can maybe work on your arpeggios, like, and also work on your time feel or something like that. Practicing arpeggios, I think, is really neat. Is you make a 24 note pattern so that you can practice them as 16 notes or as 16 notes or triplets. So something like, I don't know. This is not it's supposed to be beyond the frets, and I'm talking about. It's like a major 7 sharp 5. So
That's 24.
24 notes. So you can either hear it like if I put it in this looper. Okay, looper pedal is probably the most revolutionary teaching and practicing tool of the last 5 years of my life. That's like changed.
Wow.
So if it's 16 notes, or triplets.
Right.
Sort of a good test. A test to see how good you are at the sort of fine
Yep.
type playing, And I think Wayne Krantz was a big influence on my sort of perception of time.
Oh yeah.
Have you checked out Wayne Krantz very much?
Oh yeah. Okay. It's funny. I was just listening to him. Well, my girlfriend's boss is like this eccentric like coffee maker, and he loves Wayne Krantz and like all this stuff. And he had some on, and I was like, I really like him, but he's so scary and so original that like I just don't know what to do with it yet. It's like I listen to a minute and I'm like, holy crap, like I have to stop and just like go like lay down for an hour.
Yeah, his dedication to time, like perfect time. I kind of get that same vibe from the way Chick Corea plays.
Yes. Yep.
Really percussive players.
Oh God, yeah. I actually, I was going over. I have the voicing modes book, which is fantastic, by the way. I really, really, really like it. And it did kind of remind me of Wayne's book. Have you seen the Improviser's OS?
Yeah, I just bought it recently, actually.
Oh, cool.
I'm going through something that I know that he dealt with in his book. But anyway, yeah. Sorry to interrupt you.
No. I was just gonna say, I feel like the way that you organize, I guess tonalities or just visualizations are very similar, and they're kind of both off the beaten path, and I really, really like that because again, I think there's just so much. I mean, there is misinformation, but I just like seeing other angles of approaching something as basic as modes or improvising, because I think, everyone learns differently, and, your method or Wayne's or, Mel Bay, like one of those methods will click for someone, but they're not going to click for everyone.
Right. Yeah. I think so much of this music is discovered rather than taught.
I like that.
And so that book, like, to be perfectly honest, I wrote that book for myself. I had so much material.
Yeah.
That I was, giving to students, like, kind of isolated little bits, like things that I discovered on the way. Like one of the things in the book is a series of voicings, structured melodically. which you talked about on not my method, but not but when you were talking about that guitar player just the other day, the
Ed
crazy
Bickert?
Ed Bickert. Yeah, yeah, we're talking about how Ed Bickert always has a melody on
Oh
his
yeah, yes, 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 yes.
and I love that way of thinking about chords, like organizing your chords melodically. So I
Yes.
have like all any flavor of chord. I don't know. Give me a chord quality.
Minor seven flat five with an 11.
Okay, so minor seven flat five. Let's just say it's Locrian. Okay,
Cool.
or you can how about Locrian natural two or
Yeah,
Locrian
yeah,
natural.
yeah.
So um, you have a chord that's really say I do it in G, right? So and you organize them melodically. That, then that, then that, then that. All going up.
Yep.
Say the B string melody, and then say you can do it up the E string melody.
Yep. Yep.
So if it's all ready at hand, that's sort of a systematic way of practicing. They're not inversions; they're
No.
all pretty much have a G in the bass, But then you. So what's interesting
Exactly.
to me is like getting back to the book thing is I wrote that like say all those voicings kind of systematically, but when I learned them, they weren't systematic. They were like, I remember who taught me this and where, I remember, my friend, Rowan in Sydney, Australia, taught me that chord and the carpet was brown, it was,
Right.
I remember where I was when I learned this one, you know what I mean? Like I didn't
Yeah.
learn them as a system. No one handed
Exactly.
me all of them on the silver platter and say, oh, just play these. But that's sort of, I was like, well, maybe this will help people if I kind of lay it out on a silver platter and I'll hand it to a student. And I don't know if people really learn it the same way. Maybe some people do, some people will.
Well, that was such a great comment when you said so much of this is discovered. Because I mean, I feel the same way. I've done all this, whatever I've learned, it's like little bits and pieces. And then the more I started teaching, the more I had to reverse engineer how I got there and how to extrapolate it into something that could be, digestible to someone else instead of me.
Yeah, and probably the way probably you just teaching it, you're able to learn it twice. I guess he who
Right.
teaches twice is I don't know who came up with that quote. Probably some guy that's probably not alive anymore, but
Probably.
it's probably not in English too. I don't know.
Probably not.
He who teaches learns twice. I can
Mm.
Google search it, but I'm too lazy to right now.
We'll say you for now.
Yeah, right.
Um, well, yeah. So how long did it take you to? I mean, okay. So you said the material in the book you had been probably teaching and giving out in various little bits and pieces. So how long did it take you from the idea of okay, I'm going to make a book until the book is done? Buy it.
All right, let me see. So, okay, I love beer. That's one thing. Okay? And I'm a home brewer. I love
Oh
brewing.
man,
I've made a lot of friends with the neighbors, and anyway. So
yeah, I bet.
one day I just decided that I'm going to take a break from beer. I'll try and make this story short, but like normally my routine, I have two kids, and I just like after a gig or after working, teaching all day, you come home and you're like, you hang out with the kids and put them to bed. And my routine was, it's like I'll have a beer and watch some Netflix or whatever. Um, But then I decided to take a break from beer, which means after the kids went to sleep, I'm like, well, I got a couple hours. Now what do I do? Well, I might as well get these chicken scratch that I wrote for a student the other day. I'm going to put that into the computer and make it look nice. I started getting these modal voicings down, and it's like, this could be a book. And I just decided I'm going to finish this book before I have another beer. So I was very motivated to finish it. And then one of my students, actually a really good guitar player. I'm not trying to announce that he was my student. He was already really good. Armin, Armin.
Oh, sure, yeah, totally.
Great like player and stuff. And I would bring some of these like things in lessons with him and some of my other students who that's one thing at North Texas. I'm very spoiled. I have very high levels of students, so I bring in some super nerdy, esoteric stuff. And Armin said something very good to me. He says, "You know what? I hope your book is not just a bunch of like isolated information. You should write etudes to tie it all together." And I'm like,
right.
I decided to start composing. I was like, okay, if I have this sort of theoretical idea, I'm going to write a musical piece to go with that idea to, because it helps people. It helps me. It helps me when I'm fleshing out an idea to compose something. If you can compose it, then you got to learn it. And if you learn it, that means you know it. Anyway, I wrote, I think I had to do like 10 etudes or something like that. And then we went on vacation before the last etude was done. So we went to Korea. My wife is Korean. We went to Korea for 3 weeks.
Wow.
So no beer on the vacation. Like, I told myself no drinking until the project is done. And anyway, I got back and, there's always vacation chops. You got to get your vacation chops back. And I wrote probably the hardest etudes on there after I got back, recorded them, and then it was done. So it probably took me 6 months.
Okay. Wow.
So now I'm doing another book. This will be my third book, and I've decided to do the same thing. I'm taking a break from beer. So
that's dedication.
Yeah, the older you get, man, you gotta find some other.
What's this book about?
It is a bit more systematic. So it's all 165 4-note voicings.
Okay.
One of my heroes is Mick Goodrick.
Yeah.
I think I inherited his systematic thought by reading his book, The Advancing Guitarist. Actually, I don't think I've read the whole thing, but just like little bits of it.
You don't even have to.
Just like, wow, there's this whole system I can think of. Like, what if you do this?
Yep.
And you can change it, whatever. I need to. I want to tell him how much I appreciate what he's done. Like, I think he's amazing.
Well, that book is incredible.
And so I think in the voicing modes book, there's some 4-note voicings. Like there's the Phrygian.
Sure, yeah.
Oh, and it also ties back to something I got from Joe Diorio. One of the things that I didn't understand at the time, but do now, in his book, Intervallic Designs, like there'll be a certain lick. Like, I remember this one. Something like that. And I have in pencil, he wrote above, this works with G major 7 sharp 11, D major 7, A7, and C sharp minor 7, minor 7
Yeah.
5. And so what I didn't realize at the time is like, oh, it's just a modal lick, and it works with any sound related to that mode. So
Right. Exactly.
that's one of the things that I don't think you can really experiment unless you have a looper pedal. I mean,
Mm.
you can experiment easier with a looper pedal because you can just kind of put it in the looper pedal. Uh, sorry, messed up. Let's see. That was terrible, but
No, it's great.
so that's the 4 chord, the 5 chord. So it works as that lick, yeah, and like an A7 lick as well, or like a B Aeolian lick, C sharp Locrian lick, or a D major. You can even put it in the context of, say, a 2-5-1 in D, like.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just a lick that sticks to a certain key, and you can just I don't know if you can see in the background. You see these two colors. That's part of a painting. I have like
Yeah.
all red. Here, let me move this here. I know you probably can't see it.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
On a podcast, you can't see this, but what it is 4 different color canvases, but the same color paint on top of each canvas.
Oh.
So this is a white canvas with red paint on it. Here's a yellow canvas with red paint on it, so it looks orange. Here's a I don't know, it's weird looking.
Yeah, yeah.
You get the idea.
Yeah.
It's like there's a lick, and that's the paint, whatever, and then the chords under it, that's the color of the canvas. So it kind of colors each note or whatever. So that's something that I got latent. I got like after the fact from Joe DiOrio, and
Yep.
then the idea that I got from Mick Goodrick is just the idea of systematically working something out. So you sort of have this scientific method of like, well, let me look at this. It's very it's analytical part of your brain, not a musical part of your brain. It's
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
like, let me try this idea and then see what it sounds like, as opposed to let me only work out what I hear. That's a different sort of thing.
Yep. Yep. But then, of course, I mean, one begets the other, because if you hear a sound and analyze it, then you're starting musical, going analytical. And if you do a system, you're going to have to figure out how to make music out of it at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you can decide, what, I don't like this, or,
Totally.
Or whatever. So what I'm doing is I'm this third book I'm writing is I'm systematically going through all 165 4-note chords possible out of 12 notes.
Wow.
And I've since discovered that Ted Green has already done some of this work.
Okay.
And Wayne Krantz has already done some of this work. So in his improviser OS, he just kind of laid.
Oops, sorry, one sec. My neighbor's calling me. Okay, we're good.
Are we too loud?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Let's see. Joseph Schillinger has worked it out.
Okay. Yeah.
It's kind of like I think some of the sort of the 12 note, serialist guys, I'm sure they know that. It's just mathematically possible. And so I've tried to figure out like how I wrap my brain around how the math works.
Yeah.
Very interesting, because a lot of the 165 4-note chords are just inversions of other chords.
Right.
So if you discount inversions, there's only 43.
That's crazy.
43 unique 4-note sets. So what I've done is I've grouped those 43 into various sort of main categories. There's hyperdissonant clusters where you're two or more half steps next to each other. And then there's tonal clusters where, like this is a tonal cluster, 1, 2, 3, 4,
Sure. Yeah.
And then there's triads with a second.
Okay.
So there's various ways you can voice those. And,
Yep.
Of course, and one of the voicings in my voicing modes book happens to be one of those. It's like one of the inversions of a minor with an added second. So if you go the minor triad with an added second, so the second inversion of that, the C, makes this chord that you, instead of thinking of it as a second inversion of A minor add 2, think of it as a C root, and it's a C major with a sixth and a seventh.
Okay.
So it's 1, 3, 6, 7.
Right. Yeah.
So much. I just think that's just such a beautiful chord.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, and I just remember seeing Schofield comp like that. He would use that as a one chord.
Yeah.
What happens if I work it out as an arpeggio? You've got this. There's that 24 note thing again. Or
Yeah.
So in my voicing modes book, I call it the magic sixth.
Oh, okay. That's what that. Okay.
Spelling it out as C major 7, or I guess you could call it a C major 13, right? But then you have to say just no fifth,
right?
No, you have to have so many qualifiers on it, so that you're sort of discovering the sort of limitation of chord nomenclature. Because if you only want those 4 notes, you sort of have to wrap your brain around it a certain different way.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing with this book. Anyway.
That's amazing. Well, I like also in the voicing modes book how you describe the same, like how you just, even calling something by a different name can just give a different, tonality or some sort of idea of what is going to be presented out of it, which I think is really cool. That's right. That's what you did, right?
Yeah. I think even you can do that with the 7-note sound, say the scale Mixolydian flat 6, 5 of melodic minor. Mick Goodrick calls it Aeolian major in his book, and Joseph Schillinger in his book calls it melodic major. Anyway, I think it's really interesting that you have say the scale. Now, if you call it Mixolydian flat 6, you might inclined to just automatically think it's a dominant sound, and you play a dominant chord over it, or under it,
Yeah.
a certain color canvas, right? You just assume that it's going to be that, right? But when I saw that Mick Goodrick called it Aeolian major, I was like, well, isn't that interesting? So I guess Aeolian is ambivalent as to whether it needs to be major or minor. So what are the essential notes of Aeolian? It's okay, you need a 2, you need a flat 6, and I guess a 5. So there's the voicing that has the 2, the 5, and the flat 6.
I love that one.
And it's such a cool sound, right? And I love ECM records of Kenny Wheeler. I love
Yes.
You hear those kinds of sounds.
Yeah.
Music. And so when I first it's like, oh, that's that sound, sort of like the light bulb went off. It's like, oh
yeah,
now I can just do that, and there's the arpeggio for the 1, 2, 5 flat 6, 1, 2, 5 flat 6, 1, 2. I love that sound, so that's that 4-note chord, but it also works over D melodic minor. So
yep,
again, with the pedal, you've got the essential Aeolian chord, right? So use your muscle memory from practicing your fundamentals, D melodic minor, or the thing I got from Joe Diorio is like you can play any lick that relates to D melodic minor. Kind of neat. Like that way you can play freely. You don't have to like
it. Exactly. That's how I think of, like, I never really think about modes. Like I know them, but I never think about them as like separate things. I'm like more aware of like the broader sound and how to like, manipulate the scale to fit the chord, the canvas underneath. I think the same way.
That's cool.
It's easier for me, but it's all the same though.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's all the same, and you can get at it from different you can discover it from different angles.
Exactly.
And this is the kind of stuff that I may have had teachers that tried to teach me this, but I didn't get it until I discovered it on my own.
Right. Yep.
Where did you how did you begin to think this way?
Oh, I think it goes back to my teacher from undergrad, Stan Smith, because he was also that way, where it was more like broader colors or just extracting a sound from a chord in specific ways. But I feel like even me like really kind of diving into that was just my own exploration. Like, and I've been out of undergrad for 6 years. Oh God, 6 years now. So it's just a lot of time at home. Just and I was never I never was a mode player. I never like, I don't know. I never thought about them when I was improvising. But I would just kind of figure out, okay, here's my, the G sus flat 9 on, how can I manipulate that without just thinking of Phrygian, Okay. Like I know it's the scale, I know it's E flat major. So how can I play, just the beefy notes, just make the changes, that are gonna fit that. Cause I feel like I was just helping someone the other day. There's so many problems with like the chord scale relationship thing, when we tell someone, okay, you're going to do Dorian, then you're going to do Mixolydian, then you're going to do major, if you have 7 notes for each measure, if you're playing a tune, you're SOL. But, if you take a tune like There'll Never Be Another You could play E flat major the whole time and in specific places change one note, and that's going to make the sound, in the in the third measure and fourth measure, start using a B because you need the G7. Later on, you're going to need another B. You're going to need like the D, just like there's like usually 1 or 2 notes that really just make the change if you're playing a tune. So I feel like I've been kind of experimenting with myself and with my students on like how to just give them like one broad tonality and how to change 1 or 2 notes. They're going to start making them hear the important notes and actually hear the changes instead of like, you're going to play, G altered when you go to the, 5 of 6 chord where they're like, what? I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
So that was a weird tangent, but
it's great. I love talking about this stuff. Like, even at parties, I talk about this stuff.
I think you and I would get along swimmingly at parties.
It was funny party stories. I was at NAMM. This is not this year, but the year before. And my friend Mark Lettieri got me into the DiMarzio party.
Okay.
And, so we go to it was some hotel room and there's all the neck tattoos and the hair and it was a scene that I hadn't sort of really been involved in, checked a long time, so I didn't know who many of these people were. So, but I could tell they're important, whatever, and in the metal world and rock world and stuff, and we're just hanging out, and this one guy comes up to me and he goes, "Hey man, I follow your stuff on Instagram. You ever checked out the fourth mode of Neapolitan minor?
Whoa.
And I was like, wait a minute. This is awesome.
Oh, man, that's so crazy.
We had a long conversation about the fourth mode of Neapolitan minor.
Whoa.
Anyway, so that's parties. I'm a hoot at parties, I guess. So about your sort of long form tonal thought and just changing one note to get as opposed to like loading all the tension on the 5 chord, like I think it's like this sort of what I consider to be the orthodox way of teaching changes is the 2 chord is plain, the 1 chord is plain, the 5 chord is where all the fun is, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Sort of the orthodox way of teaching playing standard changes, right? But I've the thing I discovered is what I like to teach now. I don't like to. I will teach that orthodox method because I think it's important because then you can have, you can relate to everybody else. But what I tend to do now is look for clues in tunes that allow me to think of a greater arc of tonality different than something related to the major scale.
Yeah. Right.
Such as what if it was Sunny Side of the Street.
Mm.
So normally you would teach like, okay, C, we don't have to talk about C, it's just C, and then it goes to, it's like, okay, but then it goes to F. It's like, okay, like, what do you do over that E? It's like, I don't know, just E7 something, and then go to F, and then, okay, here's something I recognize. You can do a 2-5-1 to A minor, right?
Yeah.
So the big 2, dominant.
Yep.
And then a 2-5-1, right? So it's mostly C. But some A minor, right? When I was on a gig with some local group here, the bassist decided to play a Bach cello suite as an introduction to something we were playing, and the whole room went completely quiet. And it was in a room that normally people are eating and talking, and the music is sort of listened to, but it's a half and half type of situation. Like some of the people are fully engaged in what's going on musically, and some people are just kind of hanging out and they wanted to see jazz. Jazz is the visual decoration as opposed to something they pay attention to. But when he played this Bach piece, the whole room went completely silent and everybody was paying attention. And it made me think, wow, this music is really powerful. Why? What is it about Bach's music that makes people pay attention? And my conclusion, the thing that I've been playing around for a few years, is the way he maintains this very interesting arc of tension and resolution within a single tonality and before he goes on to another tonality. It's not like he doesn't jump around willy-nilly between keys. He does change keys, but it's very it's kind of long, like within each key. And so I'm like, how can I apply this to jazz playing changes? And so I was thinking, what if I do this thing where on say Sunny Side of the Street, I kind of zoom out and I think, what is a single tonality? What can I get away with for a longer time? And my conclusion is it's in the key of C Ionian sharp 5, which is the third mode of A harmonic minor, which means
there you go.
I can comp that way. I can sort of avoid the fifth when I play the 1 chord. I can play a 6. And when I finally arrive at the A minor, I'm not going to play A minor 7. because that's the turd in the punch
Yeah,
bowl.
it takes you out of it. Yeah.
So then I have this long arc of tonality, which may or may not, my theory is it helps the audience pay attention more. I'm sticking to the working number of 7. So I'm not making them have to start from scratch as to what numbers they're supposed to keep track of subliminally, notes. I'll just play that much.
Awesome.
That I've worked out, you know. Let's see, I can do or, you know. Anyway, so all these like really fun, or just play free and use your ear to make sure you're hitting the right tension versus resolution notes per the chord.
It's so funny. I don't do that all the time, but I definitely think about that. And one of the lessons I remember in undergrad was we were doing Days of Wine and Roses, and my teacher was like, you know, what if you just did F harmonic major the whole tune? You could probably get away with that. And, you know, we were messing around with it, and I was like an idiot. It was like 20, so I didn't know anything. But what he was doing, it was super hip, and I've messed around with it before, and it totally works. It just, you know, like, yeah, what can you fit over a whole tune? So I also feel like, yeah, right. You know, obviously there's going to be some points where you have to be creative, but it's kind of like as an overall tonality that might be interesting. But I feel like you said with the dominant thing, I feel like people don't understand that not every dominant is equal, in that you can't, even though, okay, you know, how many different things can you do on a dominant chord? Let's say a dozen, whatever, dozen different sounds, 1,000,000, 1,000 trillion. But you can't you can't access all of those for every dominant chord. Like the 2 dominant chord, we know there's always an implication that it's like the 13 sharp 11. You can do other things, but if you like want to like play the language, that's going to be the vibe. And I feel like people think of every dominant chord as, oh, if there's a dominant chord, I can do altered, I can do diminished, I can do whatever. But that's not true. You know, like the 3 dominant chord, like the E7 in that case, that is going to be an implied altered. More like you're not going to do an F sharp. Maybe it just depends. You know, you can, but I just feel like different tunes even have, you know, the dominant chords are going to have like what's going to sound good.
Yeah, and if you take the melody into account, of course, it's going to.
Oh yeah.
Decision, but sometimes even with the thing that I was talking about, like sometimes I sort of intentionally, or you know, I take some liberties. Like, you know what? Don't tell anyone I said this, but I don't think the composer really should have written this melody note, you know, but yeah, I'm saying that jokingly, but you know, like someone like Jobim, you know, he'll choose melody notes that like, you're like, oh man, he's thinking of this sound, this tonality. But then the very next minute it's like, wait a minute, no, he's thinking of this other one, and he'll trick you. And I think he knows all that stuff. I think he's just purposely like, doing these chromatic lines to hide, you know, he's like tricky. He's tricking you, but it makes sense in another way, like this thing that, you know, the term chromatic embellishment of static harmony, you know, Kesh, you know, or line cliche is another term that people come up with.
Oh, oh yeah.
Go to heaven thing, right?
Yep.
You got this. It's just A minor, but
right.
So that's another. interesting thing about Jobim has that kind of stuff running through his compositions all the time. Like you might think like, oh, he means the the five of melodic minor, but then he'll go to the natural six, and it's like, oh wait, it wasn't that, it was something else. And but anyway, like I feel like the zooming out thing still works with Jobim, but in a different way.
Yeah. Those two, the Brazilian tunes, I mean, all of them, there's like their own, there's like, they have their own harmonic cliches or those lines. I mean, just the harmonic palette of the Brazilian music and composers is just like so heavy. It's insane.
That's awesome. Um, yeah, and then there's definitely people that have checked it out way more than I have, and yeah, there's so much good information out there now that I can't pretend to be an expert on any of that, like the original intent of what he was thinking or whatever. But I just sort of have my analysis. Like sometimes I'll say, what, I think he meant this, but he probably didn't mean it, but it sounds good when I think it or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's for us to figure out exactly the intent. I mean, it would be impossible, right? But figuring out some sort of concept that you hold true is helpful.
Yeah, as long as it makes things more fun and easier to play. You know, there's I was just thinking about the bridge in Naima, the Coltrane tune.
Oh yeah.
So I've checked out Coltrane's original handwriting of that score.
Mm.
I don't think he was thinking this, but I think maybe his intuition was thinking this. Is when you do this, yeah. So you've got this like B flat. Well, you see in the real book, I think what are they?
Oh, it's all wrong.
Yeah, it's not that it's wrong. It's like sometimes it's just really hard to communicate a sound
Exactly. Yeah.
the composer intended, or that's actually happening. So this is a B flat sus flat 9. Okay? I call it an essential Phrygian chord.
Mm.
But in the real book, I think it says B major 7 sharp 11, and on the bridge it says there's a B flat pedal.
Right.
So it's basically a B major 7 sharp 11 with a B flat in the bass, And when you look at that, you're like, well, there's no tonal context. You can't have a B and a B flat in the same chord or whatever. But at least it's a way to get the point across to a player really quick, to at least put their hands in the right place and
Yeah.
the right sound. But if you want to think about what tonality should I play here, rather than okay, this is a mode or whatever. It's like it's a tonality, and if you need to get there with a mode, then so be it. But it's an overall sound that has, and then the melody goes to a 13. Okay, but then the chord symbol is B flat 13 flat 9, and since it goes back and forth, my sort of a good rule of thumb is if it goes back and forth, then maybe I shouldn't release that working memory of the previous notes that I heard and keep track of them. Like is there a sound, an overarching sound that I can lump those two together?
Right.
And there is. And it happens to be the fifth mode of harmonic major. And then it justifies that natural 4 in the melody. Because normally people think of a 13 flat 9 as a half whole diminished.
Yeah.
So, and I'm just thinking, like, man, it's just too hard to play if I just think, B flat Phrygian. So I'm just kind of spinning my wheels in G flat major. And then when it goes to B flat 7, the B flat 13 flat 9, I'm spinning my wheels in this kind of symmetrical scale, the half, and you're kind of like, I feel like that method of playing is too hard. You have to make a whole new solo on every chord.
Yes, exactly.
And what I was talking about, the long arc of tonality, like the thing that makes Bach so compelling.
Hmm.
Let me see if there's a way I can think of one thing. And yeah, so all these notes fit in E flat harmonic major.
Ah, yeah. Woo, that's killing it.
So then you're gonna like, oh, that's cool. That means I can play all my favorite licks that are related to
Exactly.
E flat harmonic major and look, see what it sounds like, and that's when the looper pedal comes in handy, like. So that's just kind of freely playing the scale or whatever, and then the licks that come into play.
No, that's fantastic.
Just like those kinds of discoveries just make playing just way more fun and teaching more fun too, because it's like, hey, check this out, like try that,
Yeah, that is super cool. I love that. I'm gonna play around with that now. I mean, because like you said, I mean that tune has so each chord is like its own, could be its own universe, but there has to be some through line. Otherwise, you're just entering a different orbit every measure, which is not good for your brain and not good for the audience, certainly.
Yeah, thinking about the audience is really cool. Like you can be more generous to the audience because you're giving them only 7 notes to keep track of for a longer period of time.
Yep. And I do like that you consider them, because I think it's important to note that most people don't care about the audience sometimes. They think, maybe it's too highbrow, like, oh, they're not going to know anyways, we're just playing for ourselves. But I do think that considering them in that way, even if, maybe no one is ever going to tell you explicitly, but maybe they'll tell you in other terms, like, oh, it was so beautiful, oh, it was so memorable, something. Like we don't need the audience to tell us, wow, I really like that you used 7 notes over Naima. That was cool. Yeah, we're not expecting that.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, they don't need to like know why they like it. They just can like it. There's another interesting sort of generous thing you can do to the audience is don't play with as much delay and reverb as we think we need, because like when we're standing right next to our amp, we like all that beautiful lush reverb and delay, and then but when you think about the person in the middle of the room who's getting not only that sound but also the stuff that's bouncing all over the room, it depends on the room, of course, but they're going to get it completely washed out, or 50, 60, whatever, 70% more reverb than what we're hearing. And you can't really hear good time or clear ideas that way, but it really feels naked. Like when I turn down my reverb and delay, it's like, man, I hate my tone. I'm not inspired. So you give yourself a little bit, but I always try to err on the side of don't do as much as, like, I don't know, try to go lower than I think I need, because
Yep.
I'm going to be generous to the audience, if that makes any sense.
No, that's a great point. It's difficult for us to, you know, put ourselves in the listener's perspective as far as our own tone or what they're going to hear. That's a really good point. I try to practice. I don't always do this, but Julian Lage told me to like practice like with the worst tone, like dry as hell, and like on my bridge pickup, and like if I can like sound, if I can to myself sound beautiful or like be okay with that, then anything else is going to be killing.
I love that. That's such great. I had another teacher tell me that a long time ago, and it stuck with me. I think he said, just turn the bass all the way down and turn the treble all the way up.
Oh God, yeah,
You get a beautiful tone out of your pick. Then you got it. You know. So yeah, good pick control exercise.
yeah, absolutely. Well, man, I don't want to take too much of your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. You are just totally awesome. I guess one last thing I wanted to talk about, or just ask you real quick, was about I just want to get your experience at UNT as an educator. I feel like you're so lucky to be there, and like you said, you have really high level students. I just want to get an idea of how that's shaped you as a player and an educator, and you know what that kind of environment has given you.
Man, I am so fortunate that I have that gig, and financially, not so much, but I do other things for money. Um, uh, I don't really consider my money at UNT to be, you know, the thing that I need. If
Yeah.
that makes sense. I didn't really say
Oh
that.
no, yeah, totally.
They're completely ripping me off. It's just, it's adjunct pay. Adjunct pay sucks. There's no benefits or whatever.
Yep.
And I have been doing it for 21 years.
Are you serious? I had no idea.
I started there as a TF, like you're a TF at Bowling Green.
Yes.
So I graduated in 2000, and the jazz guitar professor at the time, Fred Hamilton, who I love very much.
His first gig was at Bowling Green.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Really weird.
Connection. Um, and he just said, "Hey, you want to stick around and take some of the adjunct load, some of the teaching load." Because when he was teaching a bunch of other stuff, he couldn't take all the students. There's like 40 of them, so he can't take all of them. So I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. So I was doing adjunct at UNT, and also at another local college, a community college, and then doing a bunch of gigs, um, and it was sort of just going to be, as far as I was concerned, kind of temporary. I was probably going to move back to LA, and you know, and then I was dating a girl who's now my wife. She wasn't graduated yet, so I stuck around, and then we got married, and we got a house, and we got a dog, and
Yep.
like, okay, yeah, we're here now, and so I've been adjunct there for 21 years. So and I feel like my playing has grown and gotten better every year. Um, I I feel like it's the students are really high level. Not all of them, but a good chunk of them. At least the ones that aren't super high level, they can see around them that they're expected to be at a high level. Um, and so I don't really need to like bust anyone's chops for not being better than they are. It's like they've already got the built-in competition and built-in drive. So I feel like I can be more like this conceptual um, teacher that selfishly, I really like, because that means I get better by exploring these new, these concepts. It's not a very giving way to teach, and I admit that. But I had teachers that were like that I love. I love that they were perfect for me at the time. I'm not going to be the perfect teacher for everybody. I try to be, but sometimes I'm like the aloof guy that forgets what I told them to do the week before,
Sure.
and they can go in there and they can hide it.
But the thing is, that within the larger scene, they're gonna get everything they need because they're in the big bands, they're in the ensembles, they're whatever. Like, so your place there, because it might be different if you were in maybe Fred's position, or like you were like the head of a program or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So do you know Davey Mooney? He's the head of the.
Yeah.
He's great, and he takes a more like, he's coming from a bit more of like a straight ahead kind of, like, I don't want to say, I guess orthodox. He goes, I think, comes from a more orthodox like jazz pedigree, and the way he teaches, like, okay, you got to learn this, and you got to learn this, and you got to learn this, and he really does try to drill into the students that there's certain like fundamental things, like the way he approaches chord melody and the way he teaches like how to play on changes and stuff like that. It's very clear and it's very good. He's got a really good method. And there's the occasional student that doesn't really like maybe the sort of standard way of doing something. So I feel like I've always got something to challenge them, and not like a pissing contest or whatever. I don't feel like it's ever like that. At least it hasn't been for a long time. That's a different conversation, I think. But post social media, I haven't had to deal with that ever. Of it was challenging for me. It's only pre social media when they can come to school and they don't have any idea who you are.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Sizing you up, like, and you have to sort of prove to them that you're worthy to teach them. Now it's like you can hear what I do on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and so they're never any ignorant. Not they know who they're learning from. They're like, hey man, I really liked what you did 2 years ago on something album or whatever. I'm like, thanks. Here's what I did, whatever. But anyway, I forgot where I was going with this. Yeah, so teaching at North Texas has been really fun and really good, and I don't want to lose that because I feel like it makes me better because I can bounce all these ideas off of my students and kind of use it, kind of use them as guinea pigs in a lab. So are you thinking about getting your doctorate?
I don't want to.
Yeah, you probably, like, I don't have my doctorate. I want to have one, but I don't want to earn it.
Right.
I've earned it, but I don't want to jump through the hoops that, like, I don't want to have to take piano classes.
Yeah, it's, unfortunately, like, my generation, it's harder and harder to like land a really killing gig without a doctorate. Maybe I'm kind of hoping that just like a lot of professional experience and blah 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 will get me what I would like to get. But as much as I like school, I really hate it as far as like the hoops and just like the institution and the ivory tower type stuff. I actually haven't had that as much at the schools I've gone to, but I just know the system just bugs me sometimes. So I feel like doing another 3-4 years would just like ruin me. I would rather not do it at all and never get a full-time teaching gig at a university than do it, I think. Because there's so many different ways to like be fulfilled doing music. I could, I teach online, I do gigs, I tour, I do whatever. So it's not like a super necessity for me. I would really like it because I love teaching at the collegiate level. It's really exciting for me, and I feel like I'm really into that vibe. But I don't know if I can do the doctorate thing if I have to.
Yeah. I mean, you're a really good player, and that's something I really appreciate about what you're doing. Is you've got this really cool go-getter mentality that's like what I consider to be the entrepreneurial spirit. You'll be fine with whatever you do. The only thing is like, kind of the adjunct, sort of reliant on adjunct pay can be a little bit of a beatdown, which is kind of, you can get adjunct gigs easily with just a master's and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you'll be fine. You just have to find other ways of making money, which there's plenty of opportunities out there for someone like you. There was a philosopher named Wittgenstein who wrote a book called Philosophical Investigations, and some college just gave him a doctorate because the book was so deep or whatever.
That's what I'm talking about. I want that honorary degree.
It wasn't even honorary. It was like he was bestowed an earned doctorate.
Oh,
isn't that interesting?
That's insane.
So, anyway, I'm writing this exploration on all the 165 cents. Like, I'm just waiting for someone to say, "Here's a doctorate for that." I'll take it. I don't think life works like that anymore. You gotta pay your dues.
Yeah. Well, you've certainly done that and then some. Thank you so much for doing this. It has been an absolute pleasure. I've been dying to talk to you for actually years. It's been a really long time since I've kind of, known of you. So thank you.
We didn't get to hang at Gen like a couple years ago. I think you said you were going to be there. I said I was going to be there. And it didn't happen. So I'm thankful that you reached out to me. Well, I'll see you maybe in January.
Yeah, I hope so, man. Well, take care, and hope you have a fabulous summer.
Thanks, dude. See ya.
All right, later. There you have it, folks. Noel Johnston. What a wonderful guy, player, thinker, beer drinker, all of that stuff. Such a pleasure to talk to him. You can find Noel on Instagram at NoelJGuitar. You can also just go to noeljohnston.com and check him out. He's got a ton of awesome videos, lesson content, and that book, Voicing Modes, that I highly suggest you check out. So that is it for me today. I'm, again, very grateful that you made it this far into another episode of Beyond the Frets. Next time, we're going to have part 1 of 2 with the amazing Tim Lurch. This was one of my favorite conversations I've maybe ever had. Really connect with Tim and his whole aura. He's just one of the most gentle, kind, amazing people out there. You're really going to enjoy that one. Until then, please like, subscribe, rate, review this podcast, and share it with anyone you can. Again, it really does help me keep this going and get it out to new listeners, which is important in this day and age. So stay tuned, follow me on Instagram, and get all the updates on Beyond the Frets. See you next time.